if we're talking about how to plan a training session for a type 2A, you have to remember one thing, that everything works, but nothing works for a long time. So that's going to be a very short capsule, because really all I can tell you is that every single training method that you can think of will work for type 2A. Heavy overloads, slow tempo, pause lifting, explosive lifting, plyometrics, chains, bands, bodybuilding method, absolutely everything can work for a type 2A, but after 2 or 3 weeks, it stops working. So that's the first thing you have to remember. So any kind of training you want to throw in will work, but every 3 weeks you have to change. Second thing is, every session you need to have a neurological and a muscular component, because you have both. So you can either have some heavy and bodybuilding work, you can have some explosive and some bodybuilding work. As long as you have one neurological and one muscular component, the session will work. Then you need variation within the week, so not always using the same structure or the same training methods. So that is the most important thing to remember. You also need to remember that they need to train fast, because that fast pace will increase adrenaline, and if you don't want adrenaline for type 1A, and if 1B can tolerate a little bit of adrenaline, type 2A thrive on adrenaline. So they need that fast training pace. So that's why alternating exercises, A1, A2, B1, B2, kind of like the 1B does, will work great, but for a different reason. They don't need to multitask, but they need to train fast. So that alternating 2 exercises allows you to train fast while you get the same amount of muscle recovery from one muscle to the other. Now, as far as the most important element to remember is, well, really, if you have a moderate amount of muscle and neural work in a session, you really don't need to deload with a 2A. Because if you have a right amount of both, they actually can do the most volume of all types. However, the way you deload with these guys is you change training. Every 3 weeks, or after 3 weeks of training, you need to do something completely different. And when you do something completely different, that first week, you can't push as hard because you're getting to know those methods or those tools. So that actually constitutes a deload, because the intensity goes down. So really with a 2A, deloading is simply starting a training approach that is very different than the approach for the 2A. Now, as far as periodization go, now if we look at the 1A, the 1A can use linear periodization going from short to long. So you start with very, very low reps or low distance if you're a sprinter, and you gradually increase it. Same thing with the 1A, the 1B. Now, the 2A needs undulating periodization. So every 3 weeks, you go completely different. Those blocks are totally unrelated. You don't build up from one block to the other. Each block is planned individually, and each block has a neurological and muscular component at every single session. So these are the most important elements for a type 2A, because everything works, but nothing works forever. You cannot do a lot of neural work or a lot of muscle work in a session, but you can do a moderate amount of both, leading up to the highest volume of all the types. So these are the general overview for how you plan a training for a type 2A.